Hey, hold on! That's not funny. Pull back now.
Metal Gear, the tactical stealth action franchise that warns against the military-industrial complex, economic inequality, and carries strong anti-nuclear messages, but dresses all that up with bumblebee men, girly posters, and robotic dinosaurs. It's a franchise that's been around since 1987, and I think most would agree that it's never had a single controversial entry or problem-fraught development cycle ever. Nope. Not a one! Oh, wait, how silly of me. There is Metal Gear Rising Revengeance!
Now there's a pretty meme. Exquisite.
Okay, let me explain. A good portion of you are already writing an angry comment right now. Oh, I know you are. So let me be clear. Revengeance is awesome. One of the best action games ever released on the Xbox 360 or PS3. Why, the only thing that really rivaled it was Bayonetta, and that's not really surprising. But what is a bit shocking is that there was a concrete chance of things going down very, very differently. If you're a casual fan of Metal Gear or character action, you might have forgotten, or never even knew in the first place, that Metal Gear Rising had a very bumpy ride during its development. However, thanks to either a twist of fate, sheer determination, or maybe just good old-fashioned
nanomachine, son!
Raiden's hacky, slashy adventure was plucked from the metal jaws of failure and launched into the shining red sun of success. Alrighty, so Metal Gear Solid 4, you remember that one, right? Oh no, well, let me refresh your memory. Yeah, so there you go. After completing such a massive and complex game, Metal Gear creator and Norman Reedus enthusiast Hideo Kojima sought to take a break from the franchise. Well, okay, not really. He just took a break from big console Metal Gears to work on slightly smaller handheld Metal Gears. Anyway, this left a good portion of Kojima Productions without much to do, so a spin-off was the next logical step to use the engine and assets that went into MGS4 and to extend that into another game. Now, one of the biggest surprises to come out of the Guns of the Patriots was the transformation of Jack the Ripper, aka Raiden, aka Mr. Lightning Bolt, who wasn't exactly welcomed with open arms by most of the Metal Gear fanbase after his Sons of Liberty debut, and that was something Kojima wanted to change. So, after some cheeky references in Snake Eater, he sought to make the character so cool that people would go from saying, "Oh, Raiden," to "Whoa, Raiden!" Mission accomplished. Now, to explain exactly how this total makeover came about and how Raiden, saved Olga's baby from the Patriots, who we were told were dead, Kojima Productions started developing a full game to answer those questions. Now, since Hideo himself was already busy making Metal Gear Solid 5, Metal Gear Solid 5 Peace Walker, he decided to leave it in the hands of his staff with one simple edict: do whatever you want.
Got an MCS on our ass!
These are the same employees that worked for years, almost decades, under Kojima's consistent vision, so being told that they would basically have carte blanche wasn't exactly a good thing. It could have been, but in reality, the phrase paralyzed by choice is very much applicable here. It took a little while for the team to form up, with Mineshi Kimura being chosen to handle the directing duties, who had, up until that point, only worked as an artist on previous Metal Gears. So he was leading the project from more of a visual standpoint, whereas gameplay and scenarios were coming from the team at large. Under these conditions, though, they struggled to come up with a solid concept for months. In terms of production, Yuji Korikato, a longtime programmer on the series since MGS1, who was then promoted to the position of associate producer, really wanted the game to succeed. Although, with so many different ideas and opinions, he found it increasingly difficult to nail down a concept that everyone agreed on. Kojima told us to make it any way you like, but I think we all had these preconceptions in our minds about what Metal Gear should be like. That wound up shackling us as we tried to make it. So the team looked at what they did know. Raiden always displayed an adeptness with a blade, which was exemplified even further by all the flippy whippy shit he did in MGS4, so the team decided to hone in on that. Making the game strictly melee focused would give it a different feel than how Solid, Naked, or Old Snake fought in their respective games. With that as a base, the freeform cutting mechanics started to be built, which would give Raiden the ability to slice through anything via a kind of circular targeting system which would let him choose what limb needed to go. Concept art and design started to take shape, with Raiden's look retaining the cyborg feel that was introduced in MGS4, but redesigned to feel darker and more aggressive. This would fit in better with the massive amounts of destruction he could cause, because not only could he cut open his enemies via the Zandatsu technique, he could topple entire structures. In fact, environmental damage was set to be a big gameplay feature, as the player could attack enemies via falling debris. And that was it. That was the entire game.
Now we'll do a cut of that rotating watermelon.
Oh my god. That's the whole thing.
When its trailer was first shown at E3 2010, it showed off these features, but unlike many other Metal Gear Solid trailers, there wasn't even a hint as to its story or setting. Raiden was in it, and he could cut things. And that's because Raiden was in it, and all he could do was cut things. That's all they had. The team were still struggling on how the game would actually play. Would it be stealth, action, both, or something else entirely? Without that, they couldn't really build a story around it. Without a story, they couldn't really build expansive levels or boss fights. Therefore, as 2010 wore on, the Metal Gears ground to a halt, with the team making very little forward progress. Just by looking closely at the footage you see here, Raiden's just casually waving his sword around and enemies are just melting around him. There's no combo system in place, nothing anchoring these attacks with a specific set of rules. It bears a striking resemblance to the simple 3-hit melee strings that were in like the last 4 Metal Gear games. And that's because it was. In the end, I think it's because we couldn't nail down the game's core. We spent a long time within Kojima Productions making the game, and there were some aspects of it that were fun, but by the end of it, all we had was a big team and no really common image shared among everyone in it. We were at a dead end. That's something Kojima has experienced several times before, and he concluded that we probably wouldn't finish at all if this continued.
A dud!
Now, 2010 was an important year for Kojima Productions in general, as the man himself had just finished up Peace Walker in April, so when he checked in with the Rising team later that year, he grew concerned with the lack of organization and vision that the game had. Now, yes, even though the core development of Peace Walker had finished, Kojima still couldn't directly step in, as there was still Peace Walker's extensive DLC, as well as supervising Bluepoint on the MGS HD collection. So this is where Rising truly entered the alert phase. If they couldn't find a way to salvage it, then it would be game over.
Raiden, is everything all right? Raiden!
It's then natural to think that contacting an outside developer would be the ideal solution, but it was a direction Kojima had some hesitation over. I've worked on collaborative efforts in the past, and they didn't go well, and that became a sort of trauma for me. Getting real results from this one was a really good case study, I think. Now, while he doesn't say it by name, it's easy to picture the complicated three-way, technically four-way collaboration between Kojima Productions, Silicon Knights, Nintendo, and Ryuhei Kitamura to be a bit difficult, judging by that game's sluggish sales and divisive reaction. So you could say that his reluctance for further collaborations was somewhat justified. However, with their options dwindling, both Kurikado and Kojima were discussing what to do next, and that's when Kojima finally brought up Platinum Games as a possible partner, and while Kurikado thought that they were a great choice, he simply assumed they would say no, so the possibility was simply dropped. Weeks rolled on with no other prospects, and that's when Kojima decided to go all in. He was going to directly pitch Rising to then Platinum CEO Tatsuya Minami, and if he got turned down, well, at least he tried. Kurikado's job in all this was to put together the presentation, all the concept art, the ideas, basically everything that had been done so far. To everyone's surprise, Platinum accepted, as the opportunity to work on a Metal Gear project was too enticing to pass up, even though they were busy with other titles, such as Anarchy Reigns and the wonderful 101. While this news meant that the game was saved, Kurikado had mixed feelings about it. To be frank, it was frustrating. I mean, here I was doing a presentation all about this thing that we couldn't finish ourselves. What's more, we were presenting it to an outfit that had what we didn't, and would be perfect for leaving development duties to. With that frustration though, there was also this new strength that no matter what role I'm playing now, I was going to get this project finished. Now of course, Platinum had a caveat, which was the timeline itself. Rising was always intended to bridge the gap between Sons of Liberty and Guns of the Patriots, but Platinum didn't want to be beholden by either game's storyline, so they and Koji Pro agreed to place the game after the conclusion of MGS4, which would make it the last chronological entry of the Metal Gear saga. This would then free them up to craft whatever story they wanted, and when you're talking about Metal Gear, the narrative would obviously be an integral part of the game. In terms of the mechanics, well, Kojima Productions let Platinum do as they wished. Even if they felt that the free cutting mechanics should be, cut, then they wouldn't object. They just wanted the game to be finished and be of a high quality. There were two restrictions though. Koji Pro would still have final approval on the script to make sure it didn't contradict anything, but the other one was a bit more concerning. The release date. It had to come out February 2013. No delays. So, to make the game in just 2 short years, Platinum realized that it would simply be faster to take their own engine and technology and to rebuild everything from scratch to ensure that it would run at 60 frames per second. None of the prior technical work made by the original team at Koji Pro would be used, as that was always targeting 30 frames. With their prior experience though, Platinum also quickly honed in on the game's core, a high-octane action title familiar to their fans, style rankings, combos, and clutch defensive mechanics. But now it would be combined with the presentation and story of Metal Gear, codex sequences, over-the-top bosses with catchy code names, and even some light stealth elements. Platinum did have to scale back some ideas to get it all done though. Gone was the ambitious destruction physics seen in the original trailer, and were instead replaced with more mundane versions like cutting down trees and scaffoldings, which didn't really affect enemies. Raiden's Ninja Run, I caught myself there, was also originally planned to be more elaborate, because when the game resurfaced as Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance at the end of 2011, a new trailer showed him Narutoing along walls, and attacking enemies from aerial angles. This would not be seen in the final game, as making sure it worked along every surface without collision issues would probably have taken a lot of time and testing. Therefore, Platinum just Zandatsu'd it. Implementing certain Metal Gear staples also proved to be somewhat tricky, as codec conversations clash with the game's framerate. In MGS 2 and 4, codecs were presented with real-time 3D models, talking back and forth, but with the new engine, this wouldn't be possible. So, to keep the framerate stable and silky smooth, they were changed to video files of a character speaking in a loop. It's just overlaid onto the gameplay. Now, even through all of this, Platinum solving problems and working incredibly quickly, Kojima was still a bit cautious. Tatsuya Minami recalls, "The schedule was really tight. Kojima was really worried about the schedule, and he'd asked me time and again, are you sure you can do this? Like, if we couldn't, then there was some stuff we'd have to figure out about the future, so tell me as soon as possible if you can't." And then, quick as a lightning bolt, the cutoff point for the game's Gold Masters struck, and they needed to lock everything in leading up to that February 19th release date. Now, if fans wanted to, say, experience Raiden's new moves a little earlier, well, they could purchase PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, because Rising needed some promotion, and PlayStation All-Stars needed some stars. For more info on that, turn your codec frequency over to 140.69. The game received fantastic reviews and fan reception, befitting a Metal Gear action title developed by Platinum Games, who had proved that they were quite skilled working under high-frequency pressure. The fast action, tight story, engaging boss fights, and explosive soundtrack endeared itself to many, although some bemoan the change in genre and the game's short length. That didn't really hurt sales though, because while it was always assumed it wouldn't fare as well as mainline Metal Gears, the game reportedly sold well over 2 million copies across the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, and Steam, further proving the fact that its developer is always Platinum. Given that success, Korikado hinted at possibly continuing Raiden's adventures, but that was during happier Kojima production days. I think the frustration that we weren't able to get it done with our own hands is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. Still, MGR is a game that couldn't have happened without this collaboration. That's something which makes me happy, but personally, there is this drive in me to give it another try sometime. But due to all the everything that has since transpired in the subsequent years between Konami top brass and Hideo Kojima, any hope for a sequel to Revengeance, I guess Revengeance Resurrection, was definitively dashed. I mean, Konami could certainly greenlight another one if they wanted. Platinum is still very much in business. The game was made without Kojima directly at the helm, so it's entirely possible that we might something. Now, what the hell am I saying? Of course not. There's not gonna be. Am I high? This is getting a little depressing. Anyway, please enjoy this backflipping cat. Ah, that's better. If you know of any other weapons that will drag the world into the 21st century, video games, or any other media that have had troubled development cycles, let me know in the comments below, ninja run over to my Twitter, or step onto the frigid shores of the Flophouse VIP archipelago and become a big boss to nominate the subject of our next episode. See you next time, and thanks for watching.